What the fuck is up?
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another Vanguard live stream. Got a lot of great topics to talk about today. Some interesting news to discuss. What's up, Zach? How you doing today?
Pretty fucking good, man. It's cold in Kansas City again. You know, I always start this by bitching about the weather, so today's no different. Fucking cold as hell outside. As you can see, I'm bundled up. We've been saving energy by keeping our apartment a little bit chilly, and we record this on the top floor, so I'm all bundled up, ready to stay fresh. Gavin's rocking its short sleeves, no fucks. But yeah, ready to give a good show today and get into the weeds on some good stuff. Got some salacious shit to get into, some news stories that caught our eyes, so a little bit of everything, and you know, just happy to be here on a Monday, but as always, shout out to the patrons before we get rocking and rolling.
Yeah, big shout out to the patron community. Thanks so much to everyone supporting our show on patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. If you guys are regular viewers, you know that we like to shout out our patrons at the beginning and end of every live stream, just as a token of gratitude for the support they throw our way. Really helps us out, really makes the show possible, keeps us coming at you guys at a pretty much almost daily basis. So yeah, just a huge shout out to the patrons. And if you guys want to be on the shout out screen yourself and access the other cool benefits which we offer, then head on over to patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. That is the top link in the description. So super easy. Just hit that link in the description if you'd like to support the show. If not, no biggie. Just please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps support our show and help us in the algorithm as well. So yeah, just hit that like button. If you want to do us a favor, we'd really appreciate that before we get started with today's news and today's news topics. But yeah, lots of good stuff to go over. Thanks for the comment, Dieter. Apparently it's a little bit nicer over in Santa Barbara, which I can imagine is true. Always appreciate hearing from you in the chat, man.
Yeah, Gavin and I'll just pay like 7 times our rent and move to fucking Santa Barbara. That would be great. We'll pay like $10,000 a month.
Yeah, we do like the cheap rent down here. But yeah, I don't love the cold winters. That's something that I feel like not a lot of people associate with Kansas City, but yeah, the winters here are absolutely brutal. They're uncompromising, and I'm not a big cold weather person. Definitely suffer from some seasonal depression. But yeah, glad to be back as always. Glad to be here with you, comrades. About to discuss some news. What do you want to get into first, Zach? We could talk about Biden running potentially in 2024 if you want, maybe.
Yeah, go for it. Let's play on with that. Definitely a fucking interesting article that we both saw the other day from the Washington Post. Basically, in the wake of fucking everything that's happened since he became president, his crumbling poll numbers, his approval rating tanking to, I think the lowest I've seen in any like approved wide poll is like 36%. Again, approaching the level that Donald Trump's approval rating was during the fucking like quote unquote January 6th insurrection that we'll talk about. So that's how Americans are feeling about Joe Biden. There was that expose at CNN that we covered talking about how Kamala Harris feels like she's been basically misused by the administration. A lot of her aides spoke out about how she feels like she's been basically a human shield, that she hasn't been getting the training, that she's being iced out by the Biden administration. And when he does parade her out, it's not because he actually values her inside or actually, you know, her political inclinations. Not sure why he would. She performed terribly. And basically the only election that she'd really participated in on a national scale, which was a run for president. But anyway, that's created a lot of media obsession that coupled with the, is Joe Biden capable of running in 2024? This has all basically come to a head in the media cycle, and especially in like the neoliberal MSNBC world. And we just wanted to comment on it a little bit. Biden, of course, saying now that he will be running in 2024. What's your initial reaction to that, Gavin?
Yeah, so in my opinion, this is totally just posturing. I don't think Biden probably actually will run in 2024 at this point. And I think that this article is basically supposed to be a signal of strength, a signal to voters particularly, but the media too, to kind of shut up about this whole question and move on. I think that the Biden administration, the White House, and especially Kamala Harris is probably ready for this to be out of the news cycle. You know, they're annoyed that Biden's lack of mental cognition is taking away from the supposed achievements which he's recently, achieved, being the infrastructure bill and looking like the Build Back Better plan potentially as well here in the next couple of days once the Senate votes. So I think they're getting a little bit annoyed that this is taking up so much of the news cycle, that people are having a heyday with this, as the media will. I mean, here we are talking about it. We love talking about elections and the run up to 2024 as much as everyone else. We're guilty of that too. It's certainly fun. Who doesn't love the horse race? At least I always do. Anyway, so here we are. Biden and aides tell allies he is running in 2024 amid growing Democratic fears. So as you said, Zach, basically Washington and the media has been abuzz with these rumors about what's going to happen come 2024. Because Biden's, like I said, he's not all there anymore. Let's just be honest. He's not the same man that he was when he debated Paul Ryan, for example, back in 2012, when he actually did quite well in that debate. He's just not the same guy anymore. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything, but it's just simply the truth. You can tell from the way he is acting, the way he gives speeches. He takes way more pauses. He forgets what he's talking about. He even forgets where he is at times. Falls asleep. Breaks wind. You know what I'm saying?
It's a fat fart in front of the aristocracy, which fucking who cares? But I just think it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. So it's becoming increasingly embarrassing, but maybe most embarrassing of all is the fact that this conversation is even being had. Most presidents, even Trump, who at the time was the oldest president ever elected, no one was really having these same kind of conversations about will he or won't he, will he run again? Is he going to be too old? It was pretty much assumed that he would, be the top of the ticket once again for reelection, which of course he was, even though he lost. So I think this is an attempt from the Biden camp to try to kind of squash some of these rumors, to try to, throw a blanket over the heyday that the media is having with this story. But as it reveals later in the story, I'll try to find the exact line. Most people aren't seemingly buying it. So it says President Biden and his members of his inner circles have reassured allies in recent days that he plans to run for re-election in 2024. Again, that's contrary to other rumors that have come out and the general consensus, which is that he's, not going to be capable of pulling it off. The efforts come as the broader Democratic community has become increasingly anxious after a bruising 6-month stretch that has seen Biden's national approval rating plummet more than a dozen points into the low 40s amid growing concerns about inflation, dim infighting in Washington, and faltering public health efforts to move beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. The message is aimed in part at tamping down the assumption among many Democrats that Biden may not seek re-election given his age and waning popularity, while also effectively freezing the field for VP Harris and other potential presidential hopefuls. The only thing I've heard him say is that he's planning on running again, said Chris Dodd, a Biden friend, and I'm glad he is. At a virtual fundraiser this month, Biden told a small group of donors that he plans to seek a second term, underscoring the message he gave the nation in March at his first White House news conference before cautioning that he had never been able to plan 4 years ahead for certain. While he is saying publicly that he firmly believes there's no difference, said former Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell, who attended the fundraising event, he will not run if he feels he can't do the job physically or emotionally. But interviews with 28 Democratic strategists and officials, many of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity, to speak more frankly, showed the assurances have not stopped the internal debate over whether Biden will appear on the ticket. So essentially, the Biden camp is putting out this propaganda, trying to say, oh, everything's fine. We got this. Biden's, totally good. He has this. He's totally going to be on the top of the ticket. But seemingly people are unconvinced. I'm looking for the exact line here, but I believe it was something like 28 people which spoke with the Washington Post.
Oh, yeah, we saw that already. I think it's a little up further.
Okay.
Over by the 28.
But interviews with 28 Democratic strategists and officials, many of whom spoke on, I guess there we are. The assurances have not stopped the internal debate. So that's 28 Democratic strategists and officials who spoke to the Washington Post. So that's a serious, number. That's 28 people that were consulted for this. And they say that, when speaking frankly, they're not really buying this. They kind of see it for what it is, which, like I said, is PR. It's propaganda to help, assure voters, assure Democratic donors that Joe Biden has this, like I said. When in reality, I think the reality is going to come, be be borne out soon, especially after 2022. I think that for the most part, the charade is being upheld because the Democrats know they're heading towards a bloodbath in the midterms, and they need Biden to be at least a decent face of the party. They at least need him to appear strong and healthy up until that point, so it doesn't just seem like a total sinking ship. And then afterwards, I imagine Biden will probably announce at some point that he's not going to be seeking re-election. And then what will happen is a big cascading clusterfuck of competition for the top of the ticket. And of course, it's going to get really ugly with Kamala Harris feeling like she's the heir to the throne. And other people like Pete Buttigieg and who knows who else are going to get involved and try to take that crown from her. So it's going to be super interesting. There's some more, revelations in this article later on. But did you have anything you wanted to break in with, Zach?
Yeah, I actually have a kind of a little bit of a different perspective on that. I think that I think this is really clearly intentional. You're right, 100%. This is PR. But I think that they're essentially trying to do what the Democrats always do, which is that they're trying to make sure that there's absolutely no time for any kind of a progressive leftist outsider to come in and actually compete in the primary again. So the last thing that they want is for the lane to open for somebody actually captivating and inspiring to do what Bernie Sanders was able to do in 2016 and again in 2020, carrying on that same thought. They're panicked of that again. And so the reason that they're going to put out all this messaging that Joe Biden is going to run again is because it takes all the oxygen out of the room for the conversation, or at least they're trying to take the oxygen out of the room for the conversation of who will be the next president or the new presidential nominee for the Democratic Party, because they want to make it absolutely impossible for any kind of progressive who and we hate that word, I know, but to win a national presidential election, you're probably gonna have to run under the progressive banner, and we'll hope that it's a true progressive if we support them. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like that's what they don't want. That's the one thing that the establishment is afraid of, having that Bernie Sanders situation repeat. So I think they're going to try to do everything that they can to make sure that that's like an impossibility. And when we go down the article to a part I know you're excited to get to, we'll see just how effective that has been. People who are nominally on the side of Bernie Sanders politics have changed. And I think we've seen that broader pivot occur across the entire progressive movement. Where when Bernie Sanders had a potential to become president in 2018, a lot of people saw a future in progressive politics. They thought they could build their career. I'm thinking AOC particularly. I'm thinking those kinds of individuals, Ro Khanna, people who were much more likely to lean into progressive rhetoric than they are now. Now they very much seem neoliberally. Now they very much more seem like they've kind of become career politicians again. Now that this potential of Bernie Sanders taking over as president someday seems kind of basically impossible. That's the goal of the Democratic Party at this point. They want any kind of progressive challenge, leftist challenge to seem impossible, to seem like it's a pipe dream that, oh, Joe Biden is going to get the presidential nominee for as long as possible. Then at the last second, they say, oh, it's Pete Buttigieg and so get behind it, or you're a fascist sympathizer to Donald Trump. I think that's going to be the last minute pump fake, kind of like how they talked about and speculated, like, oh, maybe John Kerry is going to actually run for president instead of Joe Biden at the end, as if we haven't lived that disaster before. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, personally, I'm hoping for a Deval Patrick comeback. I think that would be lit. No, I'm just kidding, obviously. But yeah, there are some more interesting revelations in this article. Let's take a look. I thought this was particularly hilarious, too. A couple points here. This is funny as fuck. Former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who just embarrassed the hell out of himself and the entire Democratic Party by losing Virginia, which voted for Biden by 10 points. He fucked that up massively. He spoke during his gubernatorial campaign about possibly running in 2024 if Biden steps aside. So could you imagine that? Terry McAuliffe, Democrats Party biggest loser. There is truly nothing like that the Democratic Party loves more than a loser. You know what I'm saying? And that's really exemplified by Terry McAuliffe. And, he probably won't do this now that he has been defeated. It says his defeat in this month's election cast that plan into doubt. But again, it's just pretty hilarious that someone like Terry McAuliffe was even considered at one point a possible replacement for Biden, given just how milquetoast he is, how bland he is, and how representative he is of the Democratic Party's entrenched a relationship at this point with corporate America. Terry McAuliffe is a Carlyle investor, so that's all you need to know. And that's a big part of the reason why he wasn't able to bring that up in his campaign against Glenn Youngkin, who is also on the board at Carlyle Investments. He couldn't bring that up because he himself was intertwined with that institution. So, like I said, it's really indicative of all the worst aspects of the Democratic Party right now. Anyway, the names some liberals have floated as possible candidates if Biden steps down include Senators Elizabeth Warren. Oh, God. Yeah, can you imagine Elizabeth Warren 2.0? Sherrod Brown. Now, Sherrod Brown is decent. And out of all these people, probably the one that not only what I prefer the most, but also has the best actual shot. He is a more like populist, labor-oriented Democrat. Not that I don't have plenty of disagreements with the guy. But Jeff Merkley from Oregon. Others have pointed to Representative Ocasio-Cortez, who is seen as the future of the liberal movement. So take a look at that, guys. This is everything you need to know about AOC and the direction she's been trending. Once considered a threat to the establishment, now in the Washington Post's own words, is seen as the future of not the progressive movement, the liberal movement. So there you go. Again, in one sentence, everything you need to know about AOC's charted career trajectory. In 2025, she would barely meet the constitutional requirement that presidents be at least 35 years old. And if you had said that to me, maybe 3 years ago, I might have been a little more excited about it. Now, however, not excited at all. I don't think she will run, and nor do I think she could pull it off even if she decided to. I simply don't think she has the populist appeal necessary to win in pretty much anywhere other than like the New York City kind of district where she currently is representing. So, that is what it is. I think it's funny that the Washington Post even mentions her as a possibility because again, I don't think she would run. At least not in 2024 for sure. But it says there's little sign at the moment of such appetite for a liberal challenge to Biden if he mounts another campaign. The president has won plaudits from liberal lawmakers this year for pursuing an ambitious domestic agenda. President Biden will enjoy strong support from many progressives if he runs for re-election. He will certainly have mine, said Representative Ro Khanna, who co-chaired the campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders in 2020. So that's absolutely pathetic. And we've been documenting Ro Khanna's essentially fall from grace over the last year or so. He was really seemingly a strong progressive domestically and on foreign policy. And as it says here, he co-chaired the campaign of Bernie Sanders. Now I'm starting to wonder why the hell Bernie Sanders had this guy co-chair his campaign at all, because, it didn't take anything for him to completely fold on all his so-called progressive lefty values. As soon as Biden's in charge and giving the progressives a few like nominal head pats, he's totally satisfied. He's totally just willing to throw up his hands up in the air and be like, well, I guess this is as good as we're ever going to get. No point in ever, being that left flank challenge again. Might as well just sit here and affirm the president's agenda. Might as well just sit here and defend him from his critics on the left, et cetera. And this is just the next extension of that. The threat of a challenge, the threat of a primary challenge should be something that the progressives are constantly wielding over Biden's head, saying, hey, we united this fucking movement, the largest movement in modern American politics on the left, behind Bernie Sanders. Twice in a row, he mobilized this mass nationwide movement of voters from across the spectrum of age and race and gender and class, et cetera. They should be, threatening Biden, like, hey, man, if you don't get your shit together and actually pass some of these priorities, then we're absolutely going to unite that movement once again and carry on the political revolution. The fact that that's not being used at any point by any of these progressives as leverage is maddening to me. And not only are they not, wielding that leverage, they're actually actively defending Biden and again, affirming his reelection, saying that he will enjoy strong support from many progressives, including myself, according to Ro Khanna. So again, not much revolutionary speak anymore.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch back on a couple of the presidential nominees potentially for the Democratic primary, should it go another way. I think that the AOC kind of sideline is, if she does decide to primary Schumer, and this would be the only way that she could possibly pull this off. So I'm not saying it'll happen, but I'm saying that the only possible way would be for her to have this kind of like Obama style moment where she wins in 2022 as a senator against Chuck Schumer, dethrones him, and then then just plants a flag down and says, this is what the new Democratic Party is going to be about. I am going to be the new leader of the Democratic Party. Then perhaps but I just don't, I've never seen her rhetoric be strong enough to paint and pick up that, wide electoral college margin that you would need. She would definitely do better in coastal concentrated areas and then eat shit basically everywhere else in this country. So I don't think it would happen, but I'm just saying that, if she were extremely conniving and if she were, basically trying to do that Clinton political map, like, climb the ladder to the top, gain as much power as possible, the Machiavellian approach would be, take out Schumer, start spouting what a more populist rhetoric, right? Start reaching out to middle America, start trying to build those bridges, right? Her toughest time and the way that she would have to prove her ability to do that would be in upstate New York, right? There's a lot of rural New York, Buffalo. This is a Senate race, so you got to win the whole state. Obviously winning New York City is a big boost to that, but you do have to compete elsewhere. This is one of those issues where a lot of times in the governor race, it's the same thing, right? The most progressive or the most left-wing candidate will do better in the New York City area, the urban area, but they'll perform less well in, Albany or fucking, insert other part of New York that I don't know. But I think that if she's able to figure that out and she is able to, reach those voters in upstate New York, that would be a way of her like kind of wielding that power. And it's clear that she can be infectious. At one point we were all completely smitten by her, and I don't think we can completely denounce that, right? At one point, even me, of course, Gavin as well, when we were first watching AOC come up, when we were first watching that all go down, we were ready to go. We were fucking, rah, 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 rah. Gavin saw her speak in person with Brent Welder, bass Brent Welder, a friend of the show. She's really drifted away from that broad working class appeal. I mean, that was in Kansas City, Kansas, right? When you saw them, Gavin, and she had a turnout here. So that's a big piece of the flyover country. At that time was willing to ride with her. It's only recently this pivot towards the Nancy Pelosi neoliberal, neo-progressivism, whatever you want to call it, that I feel like it's been really harder for me to imagine her ever gaining that working class support. So I won't count her out forever.
No, sorry. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, that's because of the fact that she was supporting good policies, though. Much like Bernie Sanders, I don't know if she's necessarily the most charismatic or the best speaker ever. I just think it's when she happened to be supporting the right policies and speaking a more revolutionary lefty kind of agenda that I really found her inspirational. Again, if she's just talking about fill in the blank neoliberal democratic talking point, then no, I don't think she's particularly compelling. I don't think she's particularly charismatic as a speaker. Nothing like Barack Obama was, who could really sell the nation on platitudes and cliches and still make it seem like it was substance, and it was real. So I just can't see her, winning a presidential election unless she really changes her rhetoric to a more populist appealing kind of tone and less of the, lefty virtue signaling, insulated language that she relies on so often. So I just don't see that happening at all unless we see a massive pivot and she really starts going after the Democratic Party again. But now that we've seen her kind of careerist, workings, I just won't be able to take it seriously. I'll just, see it for what it is, which is, another attempt to appeal to people like me without actually meaning it. So
same with Rokana.
Yeah, exactly. Same with Rokana. And thank you for the super chat, Boeing 757 pilot. Really appreciate that, man. Willie Brown asserted at the beginning of the presidential elections that the Democratic plan is Harris Buttigieg. He still asserts this. We'll see. Good job. And obviously, if you guys don't know, Willie Brown, legendary Democratic lawmaker from California. He was the mayor of San Francisco for some time. So definitely someone that would have his ear to the ground on this kind of thing and probably should be trusted. So, if that's what he's saying, then I don't doubt it. It definitely seems that's the way the Democratic Party has been trending. That's definitely seemingly what they want. And it would be a disaster, not just for them, but for the nation if that happens.
Yeah, 100%. Did you have anything else on this story, or did you want to move on to the next one? One story I wanted to get to recently, and I've been thinking about this issue more and more. We've got a couple of people who are truckers in our audience that we've been recently chatting with in the comment section, and I saw this story this morning while I was drinking my coffee, and it just completely stood out to me as being exactly the opposite of the problem that Andrew Yang was really pontificating about during his presidential run, which is that, truck driving is the most common job in America. It's the backbone of the economy. These jobs are going to be lost due to automation, and then you're going to see depression and, drug abuse skyrocket. And, like Andrew Yang's really good at saying a lot of things that are true and then kind of putting them in a blender and like putting it out with something that's like not entirely true. So I want to work through this with this article pulled up, because I think that this will provide a lot of context onto what's actually happening in trucking, how workers are still extremely valuable in the trucking industry, and how if we actually focused a political message on unifying those workers in the same way that the UAW was able to unify all those John Deere workers, then we could see some serious change here. So I just want to go through this a little bit. So down here, the trucking industry's main trade body has said America is short about 80,000 drivers, a figure that's made headlines around the country. Truckers say the problem isn't a shortage of qualified drivers. There's plenty of people who have been through the training programs and hold a commercial driver's license. The rot, they say, is far more systemic. Low pay, long hours, and an industry that treats drivers like cannon fodder, churning out new recruits who inevitably quit because the job is so grueling. Yeah, there's no driver shortage. There's a retention problem, said Mike Doncaster, a 30-year-old veteran and driver trainer who parked his big rig at Joe's Travel Plaza for the night before heading up to Canada with another load of vegetables. He said of the 5 drivers he's trained in recent years, only 1 stuck with the industry. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle, and new recruits don't receive enough pay for the lifestyle. So I just want to stop there because there's a little bit to talk about there. This is these workers, right, who definitely should be getting our attention. And one of the things that I think is a positive effect of Andrew Yang's campaign is that people are starting to think more about truck driving as an industry. That's compounding now again with the supply chain problems. A lot of times people will blame or the trucking industry will try and blame like labor shortages and people being lazy and stuff on that's why these logistics problems are occurring. That's why stuff won't be here in time for Christmas. There's not enough people who are willing to go back out there and work and, be truck drivers. And that with that language out there, they're not talking about the fact that many, many people who are truck drivers who have actually been worked and schemed basically into this thing called owner-operator schemes, and there's been a massive lawsuit. We can look at a little deeper down in the article that basically what they do is these companies will try and lease you your own truck. They'll call you an owner-operator, right? Sound familiar? Very Uber-esque, right? They'll call you an independent contractor, an owner-operator, charge you a bunch of fees and expenses. You're on the hook for, fucking hundreds of thousands of dollars at that point. People in this article compare it to indentured servitude. And then you're not making any money, or if you are making money, you're making like minimum wage and you're working like 14 hours a day for, 10 days at a time. And it's just grinding up these employees and spitting them out because they're so not respected by the industry. They're not paid well enough. They're not taken care of. And the industry itself, these massive conglomerates, these international conglomerates that control much of the, logistics and transportation industries in and around the United States, all around North America, essentially, or at least the United States and Canada a lot of the time. They're unwilling to pay their workers more, give them benefits. It's the same song and dance that we've heard all along. Instead, now they're just proposing this, myth like, oh, those workers that are here better be scared because automation is coming and now we can treat you even worse. Complete lie. If we pull up that article for one more second, and then I'll let you jump in here, Gavin. It says this new law that's going to be passed as part of the Build Back Better legislation is actually going, and this will be towards the bottom of the article, I think all the way down at the end. This new federal plan that will allow 18-year-olds to drive trucks as apprentices, while the current law requires truckers to be 21. The provision to put teenage truckers on the road was tacked into the recently signed federal infrastructure bill. So I guess technically this was the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which we talked about was a corporate fucking giveaway, and seen as a major victory for trucking industry recruitment efforts. But truckers who already work one of the most deadly jobs in the nations are horrified. You don't want to put new guys on the road, even if there's a trucker shortage, said Herrera. It's not safe. Anybody knows this. This is a massive fucking danger on the road. I don't know. This is that same thing that we've been seeing across all other industries. They're trying to bring young people in to replace the seasoned veterans because those veterans don't want to do this anymore for lack of pay, lack of benefits. And also just the fact that, it's a really taxing job to be a trucker, man. And it's one that our society desperately needs because of the way that, we transport goods. And yes, I get that it's bad for the environment, but it's the way that our fucking whole economy and the way that we feed people is laid out. So it's a job that, yet has to be done. You know what I mean? I don't know. What's your reaction to this, Gavin? And does it differ greatly in your mind from what you've heard about truckers?
I mean, it kind of confirms my worst suspicions about this industry, which is just how exploitative and horrible it is on these workers who, like you said, are doing this extremely dangerous job, long hours. So yeah, it's crazy. And it really reinforces the need to unionize because, this article basically lays out how because of the fact that the trucking industry can't just automate all these jobs away yet. We simply don't have that technology ready to go, and we don't have the infrastructure on the roads quite ready to accommodate that kind of a massive shift. So because of that, almost seemingly out of pettiness, they're just doubling down and making conditions for the actual human workers shittier and shittier again because they can't just automate the jobs away. Now it's just let's get less experienced, less well-trained people, 18-year-olds to do this job because we don't have to pay them as much. They don't have this expectation of this being a well-paid job like it once was. So it's totally disgusting. Like you said, very reminiscent of the Uber scheme, just offload as much of the responsibility onto the actual employee, subcontract them out. And then they're responsible for the damages, for example, to these trucks. So oftentimes the drivers will actually end up owing money to the companies for the truck. So it's absolute insanity. And just a good example too of how, that bipartisan infrastructure bill is totally a handout to the corporations. This new provision allowing 18-year-olds to drive is absolute insanity.
Yeah. And not only that, I do want to point out that, this should be a robust and well-respected and well-paid job in the economy, right? Because it is really hard. It requires a lot of focus and skill. And as you mentioned, or as the article mentioned, it's fucking dangerous as shit. We want safe people driving 18-wheelers around the highway. We need people who are, attentive and, this is their career because, you're carrying massive amounts of cargo. One of those things crashes, easily 5-10 people can be killed. This is a serious job. And it also is one where, it keeps people fed. It should be a highly paid, well-respected job in our society. And one of the ways that they, kind of deliberately just turn it into like a meat grinder kind of a gig is by one, not treating the employees well at all, constantly, prioritizing things like sign-on benefits or like schemes like owner-operator. Uber even literally did that where you could rent a car from Uber and then you could drive for Uber and then they would just deduct it from the money. It's all the same kind of racketeering that they do in this capitalist bullshit to make the absolute, get you coming and going, right? Be your boss and your banker. So I don't know. It's just really disgusting. And I wanted to holler about it because everybody wants to pretend like, oh, the trucking industry, that's just going to get automated away. Why would we fight for this? No, it's not going to get automated away. That's a complete farce. That's a lie from Silicon Valley. They are so fucking far away from being able to automate semi trucks. I don't care if Tesla built one. They cannot make it safe on the road to the point where we as Americans would legally allow that to go down. It's probably 30, maybe more years away, but definitely at least 30 years away, a whole generation away. So that would be like if now automated trucks were happening in 1980, we're going to tell everybody, hey, fuck off. Don't become a truck driver. Like, no, that's nonsense. We're 30 years away from even talking about it, guys. It's really, we're a long way. We can't even legally have your Tesla fucking 5-seater drive on autopilot without having a human touch it. Like, you know what I'm saying? We're just so far away from where it's safe, and those things fuck up all the time, and they're part of a bunch of class action lawsuits right now, I'm pretty sure. So I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely an important story. To move on, I did want to discuss this recent Breaking Point segment about Tulsi Gabbard And some people in the comments had some interesting reactions to this one that I wanted to discuss a little bit too. So I wanted to talk about this segment, which I think is especially interesting because, as Krystal and Saagar admit at one point in this segment, Tulsi Gabbard was a friend of the show when they were over at Rising when she was running for president. They really respected her and defended her from the smears coming from the mainstream media. And I think it gives a level of honesty to this segment, which kind of explores the way that she's pretty shamelessly grifted over to the right wing, totally changed her tune on a number of issues, including now her basic economic foundation and philosophy for politics. So I thought this was a fascinating segment. And again, I want to react to some of the comments too that it received from Breaking Point's viewers. But let's take a look at this. I thought they did a really good job laying out Tulsi's ideological shift to the right and giving some evidence to back up the fact that she wasn't always singing this tune. So let's take a look here. Obviously, you can interject whenever you want, Zach. I'll pause the video. But yeah, let's take a listen.
So and I think others, have been tracking what appears to be a pretty dramatic ideological evolution on the part of Tulsi Gabbard, which to this point had mostly been in the realm of sort of culture, things like immigration, where you could say, okay, she always had a little bit of a different stance, things like national security.
Abortion too, actually.
Yeah. Now we're seeing some comments on economics that are just polar opposite of where she was just a couple years ago when she was launching her presidential campaign. Let's take a listen to those comments and then we'll react on the other side.
Here's the reality with the bill that they're continuing to push forward is that our government is too powerful and too big even as it is, and this bill is only going to make matters worse. The provisions in the bill are so vague that really it's going to be unelected bureaucrats who end up deciding how these provisions are implemented, and no accountability. And really it'll empower them to be able to stick their noses into every aspect of our lives, furthering this cradle to grave mentality of government dependence that makes us lose even more of our autonomy as we are paying for it. As government gets bigger, our wallets are getting smaller.
Cradle to grave mentality of government dependence. I mean, first of all, you could take this from any conservative talking point ever. It also sounds exactly like the stuff Joe Manchin has been saying. And just to remind people, like when she was running for president, not only did she voiced support for Green New Deal, she was actually to the left of AOC on the Green New Deal because her qualm about it, her one concern was that it opened the door for nuclear. She's for Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, free community college, universal pre-K, prescription drug price reform, all of these things. So listen, I get it. I have my own critiques of Build Back Better, but it's remarkable to see how dramatically her entire ideology seems to have changed. And, again, if you want to critique Build Back Better and the Biden administration, we do it here all the time. One potential line of inquiry that would fit with the Tulsi of old is the fact that it looks like most millionaires, we can throw this tweet up on the screen, it looks like most millionaires are actually going to get a tax cut.
Yes.
In this end result. So that's not great.
And this really just underscores how pathetic Tulsi's ultimate argument against this was. There's so many valid left-wing ways to criticize this legislation. There's so many points of contention that, for example, I have with this legislation and how it doesn't actually, allocate enough money to combating climate change, for example, and how it's massively just a corporate giveaway, how it includes these tax breaks for the rich via the SALT tax. So, it's absolutely insane that out of every valid reason to choose to criticize this legislation and Biden's pursuit of these policies, she went with the cringiest possible option, which is Reaganism, which is libertarian economics, cradle to grave dependency on the government. So yeah, it's total insanity.
Yeah, and I just completely don't understand at all how you make this ideological pivot without a very public reckoning with your past, without talking about how I have recently changed my mind that we don't need to give people Medicare for all, that we need to make life as miserable and hard for them. Americans do not suffer enough. We want to make them poorer and more desperate so that they have more incentive to achieve, whatever the fuck horseshit Reaganism is. I don't fucking know. But she didn't come out and say any of that. She literally just started looking at the numbers on any analytics site that's popular on fucking, you know, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, fucking anything. It's fucking like a stocked pond. You ever go fishing at like a fucking family farm and you just like any kind of bait it goes, it just, oh my God, nom, 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 nom. That's conservative viewers on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. They just want affirmation of their viewpoints, right? You don't even have to be that smart or good at it. Just look at a guy like Dave Rubin, or look at a guy who was previously ginormous on YouTube, way bigger than the Vanguard probably will ever get as a conservative YouTuber, and that's Hunter Avalon. He got completely destroyed by Vosh in an argument, changed all of his political beliefs in a, you know, kind of like a reverse Tulsi. He, you know, stopped hating trans people and like started supporting a robust safety net. Now his videos are, you know, they do just about as well as the Vanguard on a really slow news week. Like, you know, definitely not as good as we've once been. Right around hanging out where we are now, a little bit lower in ratings because it's a slow time in politics. That just shows you, you know, how big you can be if you decide to, you know, pinpoint an audience that's looking for you to tell them exactly what you can tell them. And a lot of times conservative media is that. And I just feel like she's making such an obvious pivot. Like, why else would you get in on Reaganomics and pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you spent 4 years campaigning for president, or, you know, building up to a campaign for president, saying things like, we need Medicare for all, we need $15 an hour, we need to end corporate tyranny, we need to do all of this stuff. It just doesn't make any practical sense.
And so just as one more reminder of what Tulsi used to sound like on these things, this is not ancient history. This is her launch speech for her presidential campaign. Here's the way that she used to talk about economics and about the country writ large. Let's take a listen.
We have to fight to make sure that every single American gets the quality health care that they need through Medicare for all. We must stand up against the big Wall Street banks who gamble with our money and our future. Stand up against overreaching intelligence agencies and big tech companies who take away our civil liberties, privacy, and freedoms in the name of national security and corporate greed. We must stand up against those who pollute our land, our water, and our air.
Literally have not heard her talk about any environmental issue, by the way, since she ran for president and the Democratic Party, which is such a shame, too, because she seems to care about it. I think she's a vegan. You know, she's always talking about aloha and shit, fucking the natural beauty of Hawaii and all that bullshit. So, like, you know, that would be a salient way to criticize Biden. Go after him on climate. This legislation doesn't allocate nearly enough resources to, you know, sufficiently combating climate change. It's a total joke when it comes to its climate aspects. But again, you never hear anything about that from Tulsi these days. It's very selective what we do hear about.
Yeah, I mean, she just wants to perpetuate this like right-wing narrative of big government now. If you're opposed to big government, then you can't be pro climate regulation, though, because how the fuck else are you going to enforce these regulations on corporations? You have to have an authority figure that will do that. In this case, the United States government. But anyway, we'll keep listening.
Also, thanks for the super chat, Hysteric Raider. Really appreciate that $5. You either die a hero or get rich grifting. Yeah, very true. And in general, it seems like that's saying that you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. It applies to politics like 99% of the time. How many people in this arena start out as inspirational, you know, people that we put all our faith and trust in, and then, you know, most of them turn into swamp monsters themselves. That's pretty much the trajectory of your average politician for sure. So thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate that, man.
We must stand up against private prisons who are profiting off the backs of those who are caught up in a broken criminal justice system. A system that puts...
Contrast that to now when she's defending the Border Patrol agents for whipping Haitian migrants. Remember that? She's out here simping for these fascists, whipping migrants on horseback. And she was like, these agents were doing their job, and how dare the liberal media, the Antifa-loving media, portray these, you know, brave heroes serving our country. Just white right-wing degeneracy.
People in prison for smoking marijuana, while allowing corporations like Purdue Pharma who are responsible for the opioid-related deaths of thousands of people to walk away scot-free with their coffers full. This so-called criminal justice system, which favors the rich and powerful and punishes the poor, cannot stand. We must join hands and stand up against those who perpetuate bigotry, hatred, and violence against our brothers and sisters because of their race, religion, or sexual orientation.
She goes on to say, listen, we got to bring the troops home so we can spend money here. Very, very different from this cradle to grave dependency stuff that we're hearing now.
I was shocked whenever she did not more forcefully back Biden on Afghanistan. That was really the time when I was stunned, right? And especially in that, I think it was a Tucker appearance where he brought her on to criticize the military on the drone strike. And I think she didn't even defend it, but she's like, well, you know, sometimes. I was like, what the hell is
he wanted her.
here?
He gave her a layup to criticize.
This is the moment where I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree, or I actually I don't know if I'm disagreeing. I need to pause this because Gavin pulled this clip and now he's gone and he's the one that's seen it, not me. But anyway, I'm reacting to this fresh for you guys. Either way, we did react to that Tulsi clip where she's supposed to go on and like, you know, Tucker is basically giving her a complete layup where she's supposed to slam the Biden administration for being completely irresponsible. Gavin will know what I'm talking about as soon as he sits back down. Gavin, you remember that clip of Tulsi Gabbard where she goes on Tucker Carlson and Tucker wants her to slam the Biden administration for the CIA, or not the CIA. Fuck, what am I talking about? I'm trying to think too many things. She's trying to slam, Tucker wants her to slam Biden for the drone strikes that killed innocent people, children, all that kind of stuff. And instead, she immediately starts simping for the war machine. You know, as Saagar just mentioned while you were gone, Gavin, she did not forcefully or any meaningfully way get behind Biden on his withdrawal of Afghanistan. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was just flooring to me. Again, it was Tucker, right? He had her on there to basically criticize the, you know, drone strike from a left-wing position and potentially to push back on some of the media narrative that was scolding Biden for his handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal. And instead of doing that, she basically affirmed the right-wing position and the pro-drone position in the process, basically defending our use of drone strikes, which in this specific instance, it just killed an entire family of innocent people. So yeah, that was absolutely flooring for me. And that truly was the moment when, in my opinion, she's completely dropped the anti-war, anti-imperialist act.
Yeah, she basically defended that drone strike.
100%. So yeah, let's watch some more of this. Really interesting stuff.
Criticize him from the left
Yes.
over the drone strike.
That's right.
And instead, she wanted to talk about Islamism.
Yeah, I was really shocked by that. And look, maybe she's evolved. It's very possible, you know, Build Back Better or whatever in terms of what's happening.
Speaking of that, how many fucking American citizens have been killed by errant Islamist drone strikes? You know, it sounds like we're the greatest threat to fucking world peace
Here, but it is, look, I'll have a soft spot for her from the campaign. She stood up to a lot of stuff in the face of a lot of overwhelming pressure. It's just the question of where she wants to go from here on out. You know, by going on and especially on Sean Hannity and talking about it in this particular way, because it's always going to be like former Democratic congresswoman. You know, like that's how this works whenever it comes to Fox and more. And so by going on and pushing that, it is a change, obviously, from where she was in the past. The only question is whether she, you know, genuinely believes it, or if she's doing it because she thinks it will it will help her current brand.
So super interesting comment from Saagar there about how he says, you know, they're having her on here to play this role, and she knows that. You know, they're having her on here to have the graphic at the bottom of the screen to say former Democratic congressperson. And then Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson can basically set her up to then affirm the right-wing conservative position, again, as an ex-Democratic congresswoman. So it's a very clear role that she's playing and that she knows she's playing at this point. And I think it's especially interesting that Saagar brings that up because he used to work at Fox News himself. I think he was like an intern or some low-level employee on the Tucker Carlson show. And he's talked about how he could be making a lot more money right now if he had chosen to be the brown guy on Fox News that basically affirms all of their, you know, right-wing conservative talking points. And one of the reasons I actually respect Saagar is because he didn't do that. He said, very consciously, I could have done this. I could have, played that role on Fox News and made a lot of money in the process, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to, speak his truth and do so on an independent platform, which is why, of course, they started Breaking Point. So I've always respected Saagar for that, but I think it's interesting because he has that insight and he knows what kind of characters that Fox News wants to come on to make their points for them, and Tulsi Gabbard just absolutely embodies one of those types.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's kind of like that Dave Rubin thing where he could be like, to all these boomers that are in his audience or whoever the fuck is left of Dave Rubin's audience, he could be like, I used to be a leftist, man, but then they got so fucking crazy. Oh my God, the left is just pearl clutch. Oh, fuck, these guys are crazy. They hate freedom. They don't want any kind of freedom. They want to get you in trouble for anything you say. All that like super low hanging fruit. That's there. We talked about this the other day. It's that same, fucking trend that we saw. TJ and Kyle were talking about it. They were guys that came out of the new atheist movement, and that evolved into the anti-SJW movement, or the let's shit on trans people and gay people and talk about how anti-wokeness is the way to go, and just dog whistled every like racist piece of shit on the internet, that sort of thing. And that became like the Sargon of Akkad kind of right-wing YouTube. That seems to be the kind of evolution that Tulsi Gabbard and among others are following. Like, this current left-wing wave is ended. Like, let's go where we can land softly, which is a right-wing movement. Those people will pad our fall with their fucking money because we will reaffirm their delusions.
Yeah, 100%. And hey, thanks for the comment case study. What's up, bro? Really appreciate seeing you in the chat. Got to get you on the live stream one of these days coming up. I know we've been chatting about working a date out, so hopefully we can get something figured out. Love to have you back on the showcase and appreciate seeing you in the chat as always. Much love right back at you. But yeah, let's finish out the rest of this clip because it's interesting. And like I said, I want to get a little bit into the audience reaction to it as well.
Listen, I've known Tulsi for a long time.
Yeah.
I met her for the first
Friends
time
of the show for a long time.
when she
right.
first ran for Congress. We've defended her a million times from
Many
what were
times.
utterly disgusting attacks. And people can have genuine evolutions. I mean, I've gone through my own genuine
same.
evolution.
Right.
You have as well. My views are not the same now as they were, for example, all back when I was at MSNBC. But I think when you have a position of such prominence, if you did go through some sort of genuine evolution, you owe people a little bit of an explanation of what's going on there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because again, it's not like, I've just like I got more information, I tweaked my view on this or whatever. No, this is like, you used to have a completely different philosophy and ideology almost across the board. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to understand exactly what's going on with that when, again, just months and, years ago, it was Medicare for all, it was Green New Deal, it was we got to bring the troops home and spend the money here instead. And now she sounds exactly like, any of Sean Hannity's other guests who would come on and bemoan the big government and the cradle to grave dependency mentality, et cetera. So it's puzzling.
Puzzling indeed.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll have more for you later. Hey, guys.
Yeah, I just think that it's not that puzzling if you kind of consider all of the other context clues. I did want to shout out this tweet really quickly that I had. I pulled it from the Surfs. The Surfs meme like fucking crazy. Lens must be on Twitter a lot. But anyway, this was a really good, before and after for Tulsi that to me shows you all why it makes a little bit more sense to me as somebody who has paid attention to this, why Tulsi might be doing what she's doing. When we consider the fact that she hasn't outright, said this was my experience that caused me to change. I believe that people go through political evolutions, both good and bad. That's completely fine. But this immediate pivot over a very short amount of time, after a very curious list of appearances and really gussing up with a certain kind of media, it kind of makes sense, right? Like it's just part of that evolution and that trend. So the Surfs say, how about them numbers? Clearly, because if you click on the first image, you see that, it's clear that the murder of Ahmaud Arbery was motivated by racism. That got 6.7K. favorites. She's saying that we need to look at our country and make sure that, this never happens again. Well, when she says that the jury got it right, finding Rittenhouse not guilty on all charges, the fact that the charges were brought before any serious investigation is evidence that the government was motivated by politics, which itself should be considered criminal. 37.2K. This is that evolution, right? It pays to move in that direction, right? Because on these platforms, for whatever reason, that content is just dramatically rewarded. Obviously, that reason is the algorithm, but and also perhaps because a lot of people just want conservative content. That could also be the case, but that's just always been the case on, the internet is, generally there's a lot of conservative demand for content.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it was interesting too, checking out the reactions in the comment section of this Breaking Points video to what Krystal and Saagar had to say, which is, again, I thought was totally reasonable. And in my opinion, they went easy on her. We've been calling her out a lot more vociferously here in no uncertain terms, labeling her as a grifter, which I do believe she is. But yeah, in the comments here, some people are suggesting that why don't they have her on the show, respectively? Why not just have her on the show? Seems like the best way to truly understand where she's at and talk about her evolution/non-evolution more in depth. Someone down here says you should have her on her show. I would really like to know what she is thinking. They got a lot of upvotes for that comment. Bring her on. She deserves the press. So weirdly, it seems like a lot of the viewers of Breaking Points and probably of our show too, admittedly, feel that Tulsi Gabbard deserves more of a chance to explain herself, and they're not so ready and willing to just label her a grifter, to just label her, someone that's an opportunist, etc. And I find this interesting because it's not like Tulsi Gabbard has gone on any critical shows. She really refuses to go on shows that are critical of her. And regardless of what you think of these hosts, I remember in the 2020 election cycle, the Democratic primary, Tulsi Gabbard explicitly refused to go on the Humanist Report with Mike Figueredo after he criticized her anti-gay history and brought up some of her, most cringy quotes regarding that. She straight up canceled an appearance on his show because she knew she was going to receive those tough questions. Similarly, I remember she had a TYT interview and she refused to do it if Anna Kasparian was going to be involved because, again, Anna Kasparian had openly criticized her. So clearly Tulsi Gabbard does not want to face her critics at all. She's refusing to have these conversations, which she owes the public. Like Krystal and Saagar said, it's okay to have an ideological shift. But if you're going to do it in like 8 months, you might want to explain to people that are your supporters or people that, are interested in what you have to say and have been following you. You at least owe an explanation as to why you changed, as to what triggered this change, as to what the catalyst was for your ideological evolution, which in this case was so dramatic. So, while I agree, it would be interesting to see Tulsi Gabbard on Breaking Points taking these tough questions. I would love to watch that and to react to it on the show. I can't see it happening because, again, Tulsi has shown us in the past that she refuses to engage with her critics. She refuses to take the tough questions and only really wants to go on the shows of her sycophants. And at this point, fucking Sean Hannity, which is crazy. So, that is where he is. But like I said, still would totally be open to seeing an interview on Breaking Points because I know they would ask her the tough questions. I know they would actually confront her about some of these more unexplainable and very dramatic turns to the right that she's taken. So I kind of echo the comments in that sense, but I do think that they were more than fair and used kids gloves even when discussing her.
Yeah, probably to keep the door open at all for a potential interview with her to come, and people in the comment section are rightly pointing out that basically no politician it has the balls to go on a show that has criticized them in the past. It's not like we see AOC going out there trying to come on Krystal, Kyle, and Friends, even a platform that would be, or Breaking Point somewhere that would be extremely favorable and kind to them. Fuck, even Bernie Sanders refused to talk to Kyle Kalinske. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that it's a perpetual problem in politics and that you can't be taken seriously if you're not willing to engage with your critics. And that's like, if I have one thing that I'll say that I respect about Ro Khanna is that he's like the one congressperson that's even remotely in the progressive world that I know will go on people's shows and will bat and stand by his dog shit takes and, simp for the fucking establishment to your face and act like, he's doing the best that he can and we should all be excited. At least he'll go out and fucking defend it. But people in the comment section are right to be like, basically nobody does this. I just think it's bullshit if you want to act like you're an outsider that stands by your beliefs, to not go out there and say, yeah, this is what I fucking think. You should be proud of your beliefs and you should stand up for them. Otherwise, you should maybe reevaluate why you've adopted them without any kind of real sincerity or roots or that sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%, especially because she literally endorsed Joe Biden. Like, you endorsed this man, you seemingly voted for him and supported him, and now you're out here without even addressing it, acting like, just regurgitating right-wing talking points about the left. Again, not criticizing Joe Biden from a leftist perspective like we do here, and of which there are many valid reasons to criticize him for, but going out here on Sean Hannity and basically giving him what he wants, feeding him his bullshit right back to him, without explaining why you endorsed Joe Biden mere months ago. Like, what did you expect his administration to be? Why did you endorse him in the first place? Why were you out here simping for him? And again, that's why it kind of blows my mind that we have people out here still defending this woman. But thank you for the super chat, Derek. Dieter McBusiness, really appreciate that as always. Trump, is she trying to be Trump's 2024 VP nominee? 100% she is. I think that's absolutely accurate, Dieter. And we're literally months or days away now from Tulsi just straight up coming out here and declaring herself a Trump supporter, in my opinion. Like, it wouldn't even be surprising to me if she came out here and started signaling that she is a Trump supporter, that she's going to support him if he runs, that she shares his "Make America Great Again" ideals, etc. Would that really surprise you at this point, Zach?
I would still be slightly surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised enough to be like, I'm shocked. I would be like, oh, damn it, this is really ugly now. I'm dragging my feet on confirming that. I'll be like, oh, until it happens. But I definitely could. There is a part of my mind that could be her, that could see her opening up like a video with like a couple of flowers in scenic Hawaii. And, when did it become the Democratic position to hate this country? When did we stop dreaming of Martin Luther King's colorblind nation, where we could judge our brothers and sisters by the content of their characters and not the colors of their skin? I am joining the former president in his fight to make America great again for all people, to truly represent aloha, that kind of shit. I could hear it in the back of my mind in a way I don't want to, but I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say maybe she's not gone full Trump crazy, but she does really remind me of that phenomenon we saw a lot of, in that 2017 year, where it was really easy to get on CNN and talk about, I should have said something before Donald Trump got elected. Now I'm speaking out as a Republican. Oh gosh, now I understand how vile, it is to say all the quiet parts out loud about what the Republican Party's been actively doing for fucking decades and, all kinds of shit. So I guess you're right. You can't even be too surprised by that. That's just the obvious lane that presents itself to people who are media hungry, who don't see any other lanes for themselves, who are battling irrelevance, all those kinds of things. We saw so many, former Republicans or, Trump people that, pivoted and decided to change their mind or speak out or all those kinds of things, getting massive amounts of free media time on CNN, MSNBC. I think it's the same phenomenon with Tulsi. I just think a lot of us are shocked to see that she's just like dove into that pool completely. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. And just to back up the fact that, even Tulsi's at one point ardent defenders are now seeing the truth of the situation, kind of grasping the reality of her evolution, her grift. Here's Kim Iverson, who not only was a big Tulsi supporter, I think she was literally a Tulsi Gabbard surrogate. Like, she would be there at Tulsi's campaign events virtually and like moderate them and host them and stuff. Like, she was literally in deep with the Tulsi campaign. She says, I couldn't agree more with Krystal Ball and Saagar and Jetty's breakdown of Tulsi Gabbard's view shifts. I'll always have a soft spot for Tulsi, and depending on what she runs for and stands for, would consider giving her my vote. I don't know fucking why, but the shift is very real. So again, even people like Kim Iverson, at one point ardent defenders of Tulsi Gabbard, are out here not only confirming that yes, there's been this very real shift, but seemingly just confused as to what exactly is going on. And again, it's like, why won't she just come out here? I mean, I'd almost respect her more if she did drop a "Why I Left the Left" video. Like, at least like make a statement, come out as a right winger, come out as a goddamn conservative, and don't just do this like slimy act as if we don't see what's going on, as if we don't see you trending further and further to the right wing, going on Tucker Carlson, affirming Sean Hannity, and not even going there to make the, anti-war points like someone like Glenn Greenwald might, just going on there to confirm the cradle to grave government dependence economic bullshit that is so unrepresentative of even the populist right wing.
Yeah, I did want to get to the super chat really quickly from Deculturation. Shout out to you, Deculturation. Thank you for the $4.99. Question: if someone uses "what about white genocide" to vilify Black nationalism and decolonization, is that white nationalization, or is that a white nationalist, aka our boy Vosh? Yeah, go ask Vosh what he thinks about the Vanguard before you call him our boy, or check out like 10 million videos that we've made about Vosh. Occasionally he does make the correct point, and in which case I guess we would be on the same side of the tent. No, I don't even really understand your question though. I imagine this is reference to how Vosh will portray every single person that he debates as a Nazi and a white nationalist. That's true. That is his go-to argument. But Gavin, do you have something to say about this?
Yeah, so I think he's probably talking about that debate Vosh had with Professor Flowers about decolonization, and the attempts of like indigenous people essentially to what's the word, take back their self-determination. I'm talking about taking back your colonized land and all that stuff. And basically this debate went totally off the rails, and Vosh accused her of basically saying the same kind of talking points that you hear espoused by white nationalist types, because what essentially he asked her was like, let's look at South Africa, for example. He asked her, do you think that the indigenous Black people of South Africa have the right to kick out all of the white people that are currently there today, which of course is a result of colonization, not which they're directly responsible for, but just, the legacy of colonization is why they're there in the first place. And she essentially said yes, that she does believe that the Black South Africans, for example, have the right to just, deport essentially in mass all the white people that live there. And Vosh really jumped on that and seized on it. He's like, you do realize you're basically advocating for like genocide, right? Like, just you can't just deport an entire race of people from a country regardless of why they may historically be there, regardless of the historic reasons for them being there. You can't just deport an entire race of people from a country. That's just not feasible. And of course that would involve violence and ultimately ethnic cleansing to accomplish. So, implicitly, yes, she was kind of endorsing that. That being said, I don't think that Professor Flowers did a great job, unfortunately, defending the position which she was arguing for in the first place, and really allowed herself to walk into that trap. I think that a better, more articulate defender of what she was trying to express could have not found themselves in that situation, and could have, not allowed Vosh to jump on it as he did. So, yeah, I agree that he won that debate and she should have done a much better job. Ultimately, yeah, I do think that Vosh loves to break out the this is a white nationalist talking about, you're acting like a Nazi card every time someone makes a point which he disagrees with. So that's something you see him pull across the board, that kind of card where he'll just call you a white nationalist, call you a Nazi if you disagree with him, and try to justify it. So yeah, I have complex feelings on that debate, but it definitely was interesting to watch. I won't deny it.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, but I do remember you talking to me about it now. I think we got one more super chat. Tulsi's speech ghostwriter, is that confirmed? No, I would never in my life write speeches for Tulsi. I don't know if this is a joke or not. It is, right? Nobody would hire me to do shit for anything besides, like, that's why I do a YouTube show. But fucking thank you for the super chat, Dotsbos Flash. Always good to see you in the comment section.
Actually, it's me. I'm the ghostwriter for Tulsi Pivot. No, obviously, just kidding. But thanks for the super chat.
Gavin actually
really
ghostwrites my rants. I just read from a teleprompter before I start saying anything that you disagree with.
Yup. Now you guys know. But we did have one more story, at least one more, that we wanted to talk about today briefly. This is all just kind of breaking before we went live, so I threw a few stories about it in the folder. We don't have to get too in deep on this, but I did think it was kind of interesting to see this seeming civil war going down at Fox News once again, this time over January 6th. So as it says here, as two Fox commentators quit to protest a Tucker Carlson disinformation program, David Folkenflik reports two anchors, Brett Baer and Chris Wallace, objected to the execs. Also aired segments flatly contradicting Carlson's claims without mentioning his name. So basically, Brett Baer and Chris Wallace, who are sometimes considered like the most reasonable voices at Fox, like the least rabid conservative ones, they apparently are objecting to the airing of this Tucker Carlson special, which purports to tell the truth about January 6th and what went down there. And again, I haven't actually seen this special. I'm not really too familiar with what it posits or what its thesis is, but it's causing quite a stir. It's causing quite a controversy. Again, many people are labeling it as misinformation. Two longtime conservative Fox commentators have resigned in protest of what they call a pattern of incendiary and fabricated claims by the network's opinion host in support of former President Donald Trump. In separate interviews with NPR, Stephen Hayes and Jonah Goldberg pointed to a breaking point. That's funny. Earlier this month, network star Tucker Carlson's 3-part series on the January 6th siege of the U.S. Capitol that relied on fabrications and conspiracy theories to exonerate the Trump supporters who participated in the attack. I would love it if they told me what the fabrications and conspiracy theories are, so I know. I hate it when the media does that. They just assume me to believe them when they tell me something is a conspiracy theory. I'm like, can you at least explain why? Anyway, it's basically saying that the Biden regime is coming after half the country, and this is the war on terror 2.0. Goldberg tells NPR it traffics in all manner of innuendo and conspiracy theories. Again, what fucking innuendos and conspiracy? Anyway, they could legitimately lead to violence. So for me, that was the last straw. Hayes has been a close friend of Fox News political anchor Brett Baer since their college days at DePaul University. Both he and Goldberg were mainstays of Baer's special report since joining the network of 2009, yada, yada, yada. So essentially, there's a bit of a civil war going on at Fox News over this January 6th special. Again, haven't seen the special, so I can't exactly speak to it. I do know that there's been some questions raised about January 6th and to what extent, if any, the government, the CIA, for example, had inside efforts going on, like moles, people that were not actual honest actors, but were in fact informants and stuff like that, that may have been trying to, provoke people to go in the Capitol, provoke this incident to become more intense than it might have become otherwise. So again, this is not my area of specialty. I don't know much about this, and I'm probably never going to watch this special, but it is interesting to see the two, very distinct, sorts of conservative ideology at this point, being the, Trump sort and the more traditional Chris Wallace sort, kind of going to war over this issue. And ultimately, I just find it funny because, there's so much disinformation that not only airs on Fox News and but in all of mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, etc. They're constantly spreading false narratives. So it's just funny that this is the one that they're getting incensed about and protesting over. But what's your opinion on this, Zach?
Yeah, well, I think it's fucking hilarious that the guy that's so concerned about the fucking propaganda and misinformation that's being spread by Tucker Carlson took a job at Fox News anyway. I mean, Stephen F. Hayes, I believe, is one of the people that resigned, wrote a book called The Connection, How Al-Qaeda's Collaboration with Saddam Hussein Has Endangered America. Okay, this is a chief war racketeer from the Iraq era. I'm not familiar with the other person that resigned. And then you have guys like Chris Wallace, who that's like his bread and butter, right? Like everybody has a role to play in cable television. Like Chris Wallace is the guy that they can point to and be like, he is the, closest thing you can get to like Walter Cronkite on Fox News. So, he's like the human shield for Fox. Like he's like supposed to be the whatever, I'm the reasonable guy at the fucking water cooler or whatever the hell. I don't know. To be honest, I've never been that guy that was like super incensed, or when we talked about this the other day, I kind of felt more like, the Capitol insurrection happened. That's what happens when a bunch of crazy fucking ideologues led by a fucking guy like Donald Trump, who's president, and Rudy Giuliani and all these other fuckers kind of like get together and do something and whatever. So again, kind of like you said, this isn't something that I've followed extremely, but it always is interesting from a media perspective what people decide to draw the line on. And I think it's because Chris Wallace is worried about losing his era of respectability at cocktail parties, and he wants to still be able to go and hang out with guys at The Atlantic and, guys that write for Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and he wants to be able to still have a martini with them and talk about how, oh my God, you won't believe these fuckers that I'm working with, kind of like how they talk about how, you won't believe like these. It's all just a buddy world at that point, They're all just thinking about their social circle. They have no actual concern about, how this is impacting the population. Otherwise, he wouldn't let himself get fucking cut checks from Fox. Okay. One of the most all the way up to the ownership, completely fucked and screwed. And same with anybody on MSNBC, or you wouldn't, if you had any sense of self or credibility or like allegiance to country and man, or woman or person or whatever the fuck, you wouldn't have taken this job anyway. So it's just all pearl clutching nonsense to me to watch them act like this is a huge fucking deal, that this is the line in the sand after 4 years of Donald fucking Trump. Are you kidding me? Like, come on, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money, Zach. 100%. 100%. But yeah, is there anything else we wanted to talk about today?
I had one more thing, I think. Let me peruse the folder. Oh, yes. So one of the things I did really want to get to today, because it is the anniversary of the assassination of the inside job from JFK. I actually pulled this clip fucking forever ago for us to react to, when there was a lot more conversation going around of, will Biden, release more information on the JFK assassination, like Congress voted on them doing in like the fucking 90s, but they keep punting on, because they'll find out some straggler that's still alive, or find out that it's like a political liability for the president at the time when he can't afford it because he's already at a 36% approval rating and he doesn't want the entire world to stop trusting their government because they found out the CIA killed their fucking president. And he also doesn't want to get killed by the CIA, so he doesn't want to reveal anything that they don't want him to know. So again, because of COVID-19, they can't tell you the truth of why JFK got assassinated. But anyway, I thought we should all hear from the based governor himself, the main man, Jesse Ventura, on his private audience with Fidel, and what the real origin of the Kennedy assassination just might have been.
Yeah, 100%. Can't wait to play this clip. I did want to address a few super chats we just got. Thank you, Dieter Big Business, once again for the donation. Really appreciate that. QAnon Shaman, no jail time. Krystal says yes. Kyle, no. We actually did a full, very long and in-depth conversation about this the day before yesterday, or was it yesterday? Yeah, whatever day it was, a couple days ago, but we did a stream on this. So check out our second to most recent, or maybe our most recent stream, Dieter. We went pretty in-depth into this and had a fantastic conversation. Lots of mixed feelings, but I think we had some interesting discourse. So check that out. It was a good conversation for sure, though. And thank you for the super chat. Also, Sir Switch Crookington, really appreciate the $5, bro. What's your thoughts on black nationalism? I noticed a lot of NB people get uncomfortable when we talk about building independent social and cultural institutions. I guess this isn't particularly my area of expertise or something I really have a ton to say about. But I obviously, think that people should, if they feel that that's the right way to go, if you're a black nationalist and you think that's the way to go, then I certainly can't deny your feelings on that subject matter as a white person. I think that people have the right to feel that way, and I understand not wanting to live in a society which oppresses you. Absolutely. That being said, I do think there's in general, when ethno-states are created intentionally, I don't necessarily think that's a great idea either. I personally prefer a diverse multicultural society. But again, that's not really my place to say as someone that does benefit from privilege as a white person in America, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess I'm in the same boat as Gavin, right? Like, who are we to be two white guys from Kansas City to opine on the merits of black nationalism? It doesn't make me uncomfortable, and I don't see any problem with black collectives or groups of black individuals, intellectuals, carpenters, whatever the hell, that are like, hey man, I want to exist outside of the inherent prejudices of white working, or all that stuff. And of course, yeah, that does open you up to your questions about why you feel that way, but not about white people. But I think it comes down to power structures. It comes down to the fact that a lot of people, for valid reasons, I would wager, don't trust white guys very much. You look at the entire history of America, it's not hard to solve that math equation as to why. That being said, I'm with Gavin, right? Like, I've got people in my life who are black dudes that I would not wish to live without, right? But at the end of the day, like, if that were their decision, they were like, hey homie, it's the race war, like, I would be like, oh fuck man, my ancestors really screwed me, like, that's, I mean, not that would ever happen, I'm making a joke, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, I don't know, like, I like having, again, I like America's ethnic diversity. I wouldn't want to live in a homogenous society because of a whole bunch of other cultural issues, but I have no problem with this idea of black nationalists, black radicals, anybody who is of that thinking to want to create a, a black space where that's where, where they're sharing their ideas. And I'm not one of those guys that's going to like beat down the door and be like, that fucking they're having that shit over there and I can't be a part of it. Like, that's not my instinct. I don't get uncomfortable about that either. So it's not necessary. Like, I don't identify as a black nationalist, obviously, but I don't like, I have a bone to pick with anybody that does.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty, broad spectrum too of black nationalist thought as far as this goes. So, it's hard to, say anything too specific, but I appreciate the question, Sir Switch. And it's definitely an interesting subject to talk about. If you want to let us know what your opinions are in the chat, I'd be interested to hear that too. So yeah, let us know. Anyway, thanks for the $10, Rock Nouveau. Really appreciate that. Good show. Thanks. Really glad you're enjoying it, man. Really, really glad to hear that.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Obviously, we enjoy having you. Deculturation. Look, we're not Vosh guys here. I don't know why you're fucking pinning this on. Only a white nationalist would cry about a made-up white genocide to fearmonger about black nationalism and decolonization. No one wants white expulsion. Yeah, I feel like that's probably the truth, and that, like I said, Vosh will always explode and try and portray his his debate opponent as a Nazi. That is his one power move that he will always go to. It works a lot of the time. He's risen to the top of the debate bro culture using that tactic quite effectively. But yeah, no, I mean, Gavin and I aren't simping for his argument necessarily. Like, no, I don't think that. I think that if you're not advocating for white expulsion, you're just talking about the history of colonialization and, removing that white power structure and rebuilding it with a, truly democratic power that restores power to the, indigenous, the First Peoples, whomever we're referring to in this conversation, then yeah, I don't think you would have an argument presented to you by me or Gavin.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I did want to get into this clip we were just talking about. Great clip, as always. Big fans of Jesse Ventura and his son, Tyrell Ventura, who we've had on our show multiple times. So this is a great clip. We can play it. Let me get it ready.
Yeah, Tyrell's a big fan of the show, or a big friend of the show. Not a big fan. We're big fans of Tyrell. Tyrell's a good friend of the show. Always love having him on. Hopefully we can get him back in here soon. But before we go, here is the Based Gov's take on the JFK assassination.
Yes. No, when I had an audience with Fidel Castro back in 2002, I was with him for well over an hour. And for a half an hour, we discussed nothing but the Kennedy killing. And I won't reveal everything that Castro told me today, because I'm going to write a book on it, or that'll be part of the book. But I will tell you this. Fidel Castro looked me right in the eye and said it was an inside job and that Oswald couldn't make the shots. And the thing I want to get to is this. When you talk about the killing of Kennedy, when you talk about any murder, the first suspect you look at is who profited the most from this person dying. Now, would Russia profit the most from John F. Kennedy being killed? I don't think so, because that would have put Lyndon Baines Johnson into the White House. I think Russia preferred Kennedy. He was younger, and people don't realize Kennedy and Khrushchev at that time were back-channel communicating via the Pope and the Vatican after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kennedy and Khrushchev were communicating, and their two countries didn't even know it. This was discovered years later, and they were working together to end the Cold War by '65. Why on earth would Russia want Kennedy dead? It makes no sense whatsoever. Castro did not want him dead for sure. He told me that face to face, and I believe what you look at. It was an inside job. More people in this country wanted Kennedy dead than anybody outside our country did.
Well, Jesse, you've spent, as you said, years.
We paused really
the Kennedy
quickly.
assassination.
I will say one feather in the cap of Jesse Ventura. I believe this is still true. It certainly was true at the time. He was the only currently elected official to meet with Fidel Castro while serving as an elected official. I believe until Fidel died, but I don't know.
The assassination. I want to ask you this. This is what I think is one of the most important questions around the assassination is why do you believe Kennedy was assassinated, and how did his killing change the foreign policy direction of the United States and the actions of its subsequent presidents in regards to that foreign policy?
The world would be a different place today had John F. Kennedy lived. Imagine for a moment what our history would be today without Vietnam, with no Vietnam. And imagine what our history would be if Kennedy and Khrushchev had ended the Cold War in '65. They were already working, Kennedy was, for mutual exploration of space. We would have a whole different world today if John F. Kennedy had lived. And there were many people that did not want that to happen, called your military-industrial complex. Kennedy had already signed a thing that he was going to pull the first troops out of Vietnam. Within 4 days, Lyndon Johnson reversed that decision and dedicated troops to Vietnam. So imagine the world without the Vietnam War. It would be a highly different place today, wouldn't it?
Lionel, what are your thoughts on the assassination and
Yeah, that's the whole clip. I just wanted to play Jesse Ventura's take on the JFK assassination because he's one of the only motherfuckers that have been able to just look Fidel in the eye and been like, did you try and kill Kennedy? Hey, man, we did a lot of fucked up shit to your country. Not holding a grudge. Not here to, wave my Yankee flag. I'm just here to be like, hey, man, like, what's the fucking truth? Did you try and do it? Was it you? No, wasn't me. Why do I look like? I believe in another interview, Jesse Ventura really goes into it that, Fidel was like, do I look like I have a suicide wish? Do I look like a suicidal man to you? Just like, of course they would have fucking destroyed Cuba if I'd killed their president and they could prove it. They would have used that as overwhelming evidence. They didn't even have any real evidence against me and they were still trying to kill me every day for fucking years and years and years. If they'd had, cause to come into Cuba, of course they would have, Cuba would be Puerto Rico now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, 100%. And yeah, Sir Switch, it is possible he was assassinated by the mafia, but who do you think paid off the mafia? Who do you think was working with the mafia? You know what I'm saying? I don't think it was just the mafia. Anyway, did want to also quickly look at this because I just realized this was published recently on the subject of the Biden administration once again delaying these classification of these JFK files. Didn't realize that Oliver Stone himself, the director of the 90s film JFK, which is fantastic, actually wrote an op-ed for Hollywood Reporter talking about this. So I wanted to quickly go over it. On the matter of openness about President JFK's assassination on November 22nd, 1963, which of course, as you said, Zach, today is the anniversary. There's not much difference between former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden. In 1991, there's a huge controversy over JFK, a film I wrote and directed and co-wrote. One reason for this was at the end of the film, I alerted the public that the files of the last inquiry into Kennedy's murder, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, were sealed until the year 2029. This created an outcry, and congressional hearings and legislation followed. Under the 1992 President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act, the Assassination Records Review Board, a 5-person citizens panel appointed by the president to oversee the release of classified records on the JFK case, was formed. And that's true. I actually learned about this from that film as well. And I was wondering when I was reading about this if that 1992 Records Collection Act had anything to do with the release of that film and renewing public interest in these files. And it turns out that, in fact, that is the case. So it says from 1994 to 98, the ARRB declassified about 60,000 documents and 2 million total pages of records. But the 4-year mandate was not adequate to fulfill their mission to release everything. And there was no congressional oversight to ensure the completion of ARRB's mandate of full disclosure. On the 1992 legislation decreed that everything would be declassified by October 26, 2017, so that's been a couple of years. On that day, President Trump was visited by the CIA and the FBI. He was the only person allowed by law to further delay the process. He did so twice. And by the way, if anyone wants to act like Donald Trump is somehow this foe of the deep state, this, foe of the CIA, bullshit. This is absolute proof that he was their bitch from day one. If he was serious about standing up to them, he would have demanded this transparency be upheld. He was the only person allowed by law to further delay the process. He did so twice. First, a 6-month delay on the ground that the agencies had insufficient time to finish the job required by the JFK Records Act. In April of 2018, he granted a 3-year delay. President Trump also added a layer of bureaucracy to the law, which is not there. The National Archives was never foreseen as an arbiter of what should be withheld or released, yet agencies apparently continue to make postponement requests to the archivist even after President Trump's arbitrary 3-year extension. The JFK Records Act also stated if any record was still being withheld in 2017. The president had to state in writing the reasons why. That did not happen. Most people thought Biden would break with Trump and declassify everything immediately on the due date of October 26th. I don't know who thought that, but I certainly didn't. I don't know who the fuck thought Biden would be the guy to do it. He did it. He has now given the CIA and FBI until December 15th, 2022 to comply with the law. I like how the CIA and the FBI get endless extensions to comply with the law, but if you as a citizen, for example, don't comply with the law, you don't get fucking endless extensions to comply. Between Trump and Biden, the total delay will be more than 5 years. In other words, the public will have waited 59 years since Kennedy's assassination for the declassification of the last of the JFK records. One last point should be made about Biden's decision. Back in 1992, he was part of a unanimous Senate which passed the JFK Records Collection Act. Now he agrees with the predecessor that nearly 3 decades was not enough time to fulfill the act's mandate. So again, this is a mandate. It's actually a law that the CIA and the FBI are not following. They're failing to comply with law as passed by Congress. And every single president is just letting this continue, kicking the can down the road. And of course, only, throwing more fuel onto the conspiracy theories, which of course exist around this incident, because, how could they not exist? How could people not be conspiratorial when 59 years since Kennedy's assassination, they're still refusing to show us these documents?
Yeah, I mean, our government is lying to, and that's just how you know, everybody. That's how you know that it's not a fucking, it was a lone gunman, Oswald, he was a bad guy. We took, Jack Ruby, like, of course, the Jack Ruby was from the fucking government. He was there to make sure that the case never went to trial. Nothing ever came out. Come on, guys. Come on. Let's start living in 2021 now. We all know this. Everybody knows that, we all know it. Everybody knows it. But anyway, it is what it is. Thanks everybody for tuning in, though. I think that's the end of our 90-minute power stream. Assuming that there's news to be talked about, we will be back tomorrow. But before we get the fuck out of here, we will shout out our patrons, because you mean the world to us, and we really depend on your support and all that jazz.
Yeah, huge shout out to the patrons. As always, we do like to begin and end all of our live stream with a big shout out to the patron community. So if you want to be featured on the shout out screen at the beginning and end of every live stream and at the end of all of our videos in the credits, you can hit that link in the description, top link in the description. It's patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. So if you'd like to throw us a few bucks, help support the show, would genuinely appreciate that and keep us going, keep us doing this hard work, coming at you guys at an almost daily basis. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. Really appreciated chatting with you, going over the news. Love monitoring your opinions as well in the chat as always. Love to see it. So yeah, thanks for tuning in today, guys. We'll hopefully be back tomorrow. But yeah, if you want to help support the show and keep what we do possible, then make sure to hit up that link in the description. And it does look like we got one more super chat that we'll address before signing off for today. Sir Switch Crickington, thank you once again for the $10. I'm not for ethnostate/segregation, but the socialist idea of rising tide lifts all boats is kind of moot when the boats were never made equally in the first place. The black boat is rotting and full of holes. So yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. I guess my only suggestion or pushback maybe would be that I think the energy, money, attention, etc. would better be spent, better be expended trying to fix that rot and fix those holes, rather than just starting from scratch and creating a whole new state or a whole new colony or whatever you want to call it. So I think we should ensure the equal rights and everything of all of our citizens here, and I'm generally in favor of integrated cultural communities. I think the same goes with what's going on Palestine and Israel. I'm a supporter of a one-state solution. I don't believe in segregation. I think we should try to make sure that everyone is properly taken care of in one place as possible. But what's your thoughts on that, Zach?
Yeah, I hear you, Sir Switch. I mean, I don't want to put any words in your mouth. And when we were talking about, our, opinions on, ethno states or whatever, I wasn't, imposing that on you at all. And yeah, I definitely hear where you're coming from, where, the United States as a society as a whole that has been built on the back of not just white supremacy, but of, basically the domination of black individuals, right? Like, we have to be very clear in that the domination of black individuals, the domination of indigenous individuals. And, you can't just, say, oh, well, now you have healthcare, everything's fine, right? I mean, people have been systematically robbed of their wealth, since they were brought here on fucking slave ships, right? I mean, you can't ignore that reality, right? The fact that is so true. countless examples since then, but of course you have reparations, which is a debt owed, right? We've talked about that a lot. Socialist MMA Nick, our good friend of the show from FHL, he always makes the point that you can't be pro worker without being pro reparations, because reparations is a debt owed. It is for unpaid work. There's the Ta-Nehisi Coates piece, which people have mixed feelings about Ta-Nehisi Coates. One of the things that I think the points that he makes really well, in addition to being just a beautiful writer, is when he lays out how black wealth was stolen from black families through the housing market, right? One of the chief ways that Americans were able to retire, build a nest egg, create any kind of long-term value was because of reduced mortgage rates and the fact that you could buy a home in the post-boomer, after World War II kind of America. And that was how people created wealth. Well, black people were systematically cheated out of building that wealth, and then forced into the financial class situations, and now a permanent class of renters. And yes, of course, these things at times happened to white people too, but they were targeted at the black community, the brown community. So I definitely hear where you're saying, Switch, and we need to address all those things in tangent with these rising tides lifting all boats. 100%. I don't agree with a 100% class reductive analysis of the situation, because America has never been 100% class reductive. It has always been built upon the legacy of domination of indigenous folks and the subjugation and persecution of black and brown folks. So 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And I absolutely am a supporter of reparations, not just for the African American community, but of course for the Native indigenous community as well. So yeah, I think that's all good points. Sir Switch says reparations will go right back into the elite pockets. Well, I'm not 100% sure of your perspective on that. Then maybe on a future stream we can get more into this issue, because it is very dense and deserves more time and thought than just a few off the cuff thoughts. But I'll definitely read more about that and the position against reparations, I guess, from a black nationalist perspective, because it's certainly interesting to think about for no other reason than that. But yeah, thanks really for the contribution and the comments. Really thought provoking stuff.
Yeah, peace out, everybody. We'll be back.